In the next few lessons, we're going to continue our discussion on advanced fillet types and contrast face fillets with hold line fillets. Let's open the sample for this lesson, which is called Arc and Spline Base Fillets. You'll find that in the Chapter 5 folder for your SOLIDWORKS 2013 Advanced Course sample files. Notice that in this part, I've created two separate fillets. The top fillet is a variable radius fillet, and the bottom fillet is a face fillet that uses hold lines. The first thing we want to do is to check your settings. Let's go into Tools Options, Display Selection, and make sure that your Dynamic Highlight from Graphics View is turned on. This setting can often turn itself off, especially if you have multiple versions of SOLIDWORKS installed on the same machine. With that setting turned on, we can place the cursor over each one of the sketch items, and to the lower right-hand corner of the cursor, you will see a small icon. For these top selections, the icon is a circle. For the lower selections, the icon is a spline. That means that the variable radius fillet creates an arc-based fillet. Its cross-section at every point is an arc. But our double hold line fillet creates a spline-based fillet. Spline-based fillets can be smoother than an arc-based fillet because they can have curvature continuity, where an arc-based fillet can only have tangency. The order of smoothness for edges is a sharp edge, which is considered C0. This is contact. It just means that the faces on either side of the edge contact each other at the edge. The next is C1, which is tangency, and that means that the face on one side of the edge is tangent to the face on the other side of the edge. Now, in this case, the curvature of these two faces is obviously not the same because the curvature of a radius is constant and the curvature of a flat face is infinite. If we look at the edge down here, this is what we would consider C2 or curvature continuity, and that's because the spline changes curvature along its length. You can see it's very flat on the ends, and most of the curvature is actually in the center. So as the spline approaches the edge, it gets flatter and flatter. And that's because this face is flat. You'll see as we create one of these that curvature continuity is a part of this transition across the edge. Let's go ahead and create some fillets, and you'll see a little more what I'm talking about. I'm just going to flip this part over and use the other side. And I'm going to turn off the display for those two particular sketches. Now I'm making sure to use the sketches are shown, but I just have these two individual sketches turned off. Let's start with creating a variable radius fillet. So I'll click on the fillet icon, select this edge, and I'll start by changing from constant radius, which is the default fillet type, to variable radius. From here, I can assign radius values. I'll just click on this flag in the unassigned area and type in 5. And then I'll click on this little point along the edge in the unassigned area, 10. Maybe this one is 15. And maybe this one is 25. Now on the very end, I'm going to click in unassigned and press 0 on the keyboard and then enter. Now a zero radius fillet isn't something that you should make widespread use of because this creates a degenerate point in the model where this face goes down to a single point. Degenerate points can cause many problems in your models, but sometimes it's the only way to create something that you're trying to create. If we go ahead and accept this fillet, now let's use the intersection curve function and select each one of these planes. I'm using Control on the keyboard to make sure these all get selected, and then select the face and press the green check for OK. Press the cancel to get out. Now let's take a look at each one of these cross sections. Notice that each one is an arc. We've got a center point for each one. And notice something else. The two edges that were created are symmetrical about the edge that was there, the edge that was removed by the fillet. So each one of these edges is at every point the same distance away from the original edge, and that's what allows SOLIDWORKS to apply an arc-based fillet and have it be tangent to both sides. Let's now make the more complex type of fillet. This is called a hold line fillet. We're going to create this by creating first a sketch on one face. I'm noticing that I'm getting a little area here that's not doing what I want. So I'm going to use the handle on the spline to straighten that out. Once I've got that set the way I want it, I'm going to use a split line to split this face. Make sure this is set to projection and click the green check. So now we've created an edge, and what we're going to do is create another edge on the other side and force the fillet to go in between those two edges. So now I'll click on this face, click on my spline tool, and I'll do something different on this side. Your spline doesn't have to look exactly like this, but it should remain on the face, and it shouldn't get too crazy. Let's use the split line now to split this face. Now the point is here that this edge is further away from the original edge than this edge. And there is no way that if you were to draw an arc on this face, it could be tangent to both ends. Let's actually try that. I'm going to select the face, select an arc, and then I'm going to make this arc connect to both endpoints here, and then draw it like this. Now, you can see immediately, because this is so exaggerated, that if this arc is tangent to this line, make that tangent, there's no way that it can be also tangent up here. The only way to make something like that happen is by using a spline. So let me first remove that arc, and now let's do a spline. Let's just use a 2-point spline. And now I'm going to click on the spline, control-click this edge, make that tangent. Click on this edge, control-click the spline, and make that tangent. Now, I don't want it to have this curvature in it, so I'm going to relax this one or pull it back pretty far. We don't have that kind of control in the actual fillet feature that we're going to create, but drawing the spline will give us some idea of what this fillet is going to look like. Let's get out of the sketch and now actually create the fillet. In this case, we're going to move on from the variable radius to the face fillet, and we're not going to key in a value. This is a variable radius fillet, but the radius is going to be driven by these two edges. And in fact, it's not a true radius because it's driven by a spline, which has multiple radiuses along its path. On the first selection set, let's select this face. And on the second selection set, let's select this face. You could also select the interior faces if you want. So instead of that face, you might select this one, and instead of here, you might pick that one. For visualization purposes, that might be the better way to do it. Now, in the fillet options, we need to expand this panel. We're going to select two hold lines. So we'll select one, and as we select one, you see that SOLIDWORKS is automatically creating the symmetrical edge over here. This is very nice, but it's not what we want it to do. It will do this automatically because it's trying to fit an arc-based fillet into that space. With a double hold line, the first thing that you'll see is that the preview fails. And in fact, if we went to say OK on here, the rest of the feature would also fail. The secret of getting a double hold line fillet to work is using the curvature continuous option. And that essentially tells SOLIDWORKS internally to move from trying to create a arc-based fillet to trying to create a spline-based fillet. You see now that it's going to work. And you see also that the orange preview is very close to the sketch spline that we created here, which was our guess of what it was going to look like. So now I'll click on the green check, and we've got a spline-based fillet. Now we can take a look at this and examine it using the intersection curve. And again, let's click on all these planes. Remember to control click. If you try to do a shift selection to select a range or another way of selecting those, SOLIDWORKS may not understand that you're trying to select a lot of planes at once. Then you need to also select the face of the fillet and click the green check and then the red X to get out. Notice that each one of these is a spline. You know that because of the feedback we're getting on the cursor. You can right-click on the spline and show curvature combs just to convince yourself. And we could come in here and take a look at our original guess and then the actual resulting edge.